Well, but if you're working a minimum wage job, you're not a public person. You're a Jane Doe in a lot of these cases as well, right? Remember the whole Nellie situation? There was a Jane Doe that claimed that he raped her. Ultimately, it went nowhere, but you still don't know who this Jane Doe is, right? He had to spend a whole bunch of money, and he got his reputation ran through the mud and so forth. But let me tell you something, as someone who's been through court cases and has had depositions and the whole thing, there's one thing to say, okay, I have these accusations, I settled them, I admit no wrongdoing in the process, everything, life goes on, as opposed to going to the courtroom and now every detail is being pulled out. You're doing depositions, which become public. People release footage from the depositions. Every single, they go and get access to your cell phone and your email, and all this other personal shit is now being thrown into the air. Like, you're better off just settling and letting certain people think, oh, he just settled because he's guilty. When a lot of times, people who really know, people in a state of power who have money, all know that settlements most times are not an admission of guilt. It's just a financial decision.
Well, I mean, that's true. But at the same time, I mean, a settlement is not an admission of guilt or innocence. It's a settlement, right? It's the easiest legal thing to do.
Yes.
This is why I'll say to that. Every single person that is rich, famous, or noteworthy for any reason is a target.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person.
Including me and you.
Including me and you.
Yes.
Every single person that's rich, famous, or noteworthy is a target. That's true. That's true. If you've known a victim of sexual abuse, if you've talked to many different women across the spectrum that have been victims of sexual abuse, and if you've looked into the cases and to the case studies of a lot of these things, I believe that women are still more likely, way more likely, to be sexually abused and physically abused by rich and powerful men and say nothing than they are to make assertions like that when it didn't happen.
I agree.
And so I guess the thing is, the thing is now is knowing that we have to do better by our women, and knowing that there is a history in America of Black men being falsely accused of sexual assault. How do we square those two emotional things? Because when I say emotional things, I mean, it is emotional. There's data. There are numbers that have been crunched on how much of these things are lies. And it's been done in Canada, in America, all over the place. It just doesn't happen as much as people think it does. It doesn't happen a lot at all. So there's number. But the argument that we're having is an emotional argument, particularly in the Black community, where powerful and successful Black men are so meaningful to us that immediately, back in the day when Mike Tyson had this situation, my mama was like, she lying. My mama was like, she lying. You know what I mean? Like, I heard for so many, we know that that's the way that you take them down. But now that we want women to be more powerful and empowered, how do we have conversations about this, about Jonathan Majors, even though his accuser looks to be white? But how do we have conversations about this and talk about this in a way that prioritizes the truth of it and not how we feel about it? Because the way we feel about this right now is we have to wait and see what happens. That's it. Like, I mean, the truth of it is we have to wait and see what happens. The way we feel about it is either get this nigga out of here or whatever. And I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that, there are people that think that there are other women that will come forward or have come forward, whatever.
Well, with Jonathan Majors, other women have come forward and are cooperating with NYPD.
Okay, so once we have...
I don't know the details of that.
So once we have that...
I'm just telling you the facts of them.
Once we have that information, and once there's a trial, and once it all comes out, everyone is free to make whatever determination about Jonathan Majors they want. They're free to make it now. But what I would just say is a lot of this is girded up in how we feel about either Black men being put on trial or the protection of Black women or protection of women, period.
Well, if there is a trial, but usually there's no trials, 90% of cases end up pleading, right? So
he might plead out.
He might plead out.
But I'll tell you right now, I would like to think that we live in a country to where if you get accused of something and you beat it, then you're an innocent person. But, there are caveats. And I don't know how things are going to work out for him particularly with a company like Disney, who is a family-oriented company.
Yes.
And also sometimes people beat stuff,
Yeah.
OJ killed them 2 people.
Well, this takes me to my next topic, and this is something that you've actually commented on yourself, the YK Osiris Sukihana situation.
Yeah.
During an interview, YK kind of approached Suki and I guess tried to kiss her and so forth, and she was resisting, and I guess the co-host was kind of laughing at the situation and so forth. And when the video came out, it just looked really bad for YK, who I've interviewed before multiple times. Nice kid, very young, somewhat naive. If you were to give me, if I were to give my honest opinion on him, he's definitely, he was thrown into this business as like a teenager essentially, and, has been trying to adjust and so forth. But it was kind of cringy when you saw what happened.
It was bad.
It was cringy. And from his point of view, I don't know what their relationship was beforehand, right? Maybe the last 10 times they saw each other, Sukihana jumped on him and was kissing on him, and they're playing around and so forth. And on that particular day, she wasn't feeling that type of playful energy.
Yeah, but why would you say
know.
Maybe they've had that before?
I don't know. See, that's the thing. Watching this, there was some air of familiarity between those two.
Yeah.
I'm not justifying what he did, but what I'm saying is this was not a total stranger rolling up on this girl and she's like, who the hell is this? Clearly they know each other to some degree, and he didn't read the room properly and he did what he did and it looked cringy, and so forth. Yeah. Now, he did apologize multiple times and she accepted his apology publicly. Yeah. But you've had something to say about this.
I think there's an underlying message here. And that is men feel entitled to women. Men feel entitled to women. If we're being honest, if I'm just talking, men feel entitled to women. Our bodies tell us that a woman is there to sort of meet a need that we have. And we know this need. We've been knowing this need since we were 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. There's a need that our bodies have told us that we have, and women are there to meet this need. My dad, God rest his soul, who was my version of a man, it's my version of a man, my image of a man, should I say. So I remember I got to be 16, I was 15, my dad said, yo, you had any pussy yet? And I'm like, no, I haven't had any pussy yet. Because it makes us just a lie to him. He knew the answer to the question before he was asking me. He was like, all right, now, you're 16, man, you're a Lathan man. You're 16, you ain't had no pussy yet. You're a Lathan. And so it's interesting that made me think, shit, I gotta get some pussy. Like, I have to have sex with a woman. So the women that I would meet were no longer individuals. They were beings to reinforce my manhood. They were things for me to try to become a man with, like to be a Lathan man. It's not like I didn't want to have sex with them. I, of course, wanted to have sex with them very badly. But now my manhood was being reinforced by the fact that a woman was there to have sex with me, right? And I think sometimes as men, we look at women like that. And the reason why I bring that up with the Sukihana situation is because she talks very openly about how much she loves sex, about how she's a sexual being, about the things that she does. I've seen the things that she's done.
Right, she has videos of her giving head and
all that stuff like that. That in no way entitles any man to her body.
Agreed.
Like, not even in a little bit.
Yeah.
But what men sometimes are looking for is not permission from a woman or not consent for a woman. They're looking for a reason. They're looking for a reason, like a reason. Okay, so the reason is she's dressed a certain way, which must mean that she consents. The reason is she talks a certain way, which means that she is okay with this. A reason to bypass treating the woman as a human being. A reason to go around giving her the same respect that you would want her to give to you. And so I saw another situation on Candy Burris' podcast where the guy who is her co-host, takes his phone and apparently showed Sukihana a picture of his dick, right? Mm-hmm. Showed him a picture of his dick and was telling her how he wanted to do all of this kind of stuff and all of that. He felt like the way she talks about herself gave him a reason that he could do that. It doesn't.
Yeah.
If a woman says, I like to fuck big dicks, that don't mean she want to fuck yours.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That don't mean that she wants that from you.
Yeah.
She could be saying all of that and be talking about one guy, her husband.
Yeah.
She could be talking about every guy except
for
you. You know what I mean?
True.
And so the reality of it is, and I'm not putting all of this on YK Osiris because it's bigger than him, right? It's bigger than him in the way that we deal and relate to women. He learned the hard way that there is a way that you conduct yourself when you are around a woman. And he learned it in front of the entire world. And I hope that everybody else learned it with him. That doesn't mean that they're not, we know that there are ways that consent is not verbal, right? Everybody knows you kissing on the girl, you got her down there, you put your hands on her panties. If she lifts her ass up so you can take her underwear off, it's a go. Everybody knows if at least at that point, until she says it's not a go. Everybody knows that there are ways that nonverbal consent happens. Everybody knows that a lot of times men and women are in situations where everybody understands what's going on. But in that situation, there's no way you could argue that that's what was going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so for him and for everybody else, I'm not with the canceling shit. I think the kid came back and took responsibility for it. I think that she opened up and talked a little bit about how she looks at things, and she showed to me a lot of compassion. Mm-hmm. And so I think the situation resolved itself in a way that was nutritious. You know what I mean? And it's important for everybody else to accept her apology too, not just YK Osiris. But the reality is this. Men are in no way entitled to women's bodies. Like, they're just not.
I agree.